It's officially AJ Dillon Appreciation Week, and for Dynasty Stashers of running backs, this is essentially our Super Bowl. That and more this week on the Footballguys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, we've been waiting on guys like Alexander Mattison. We always bring up the name James Conner from previous years and this same profile, but AJ Dillon, we've been waiting for this, and it is finally here, week 11.
We've been waiting for you, AJ Dillon. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is, and you and I were discussing before the show that this was for me, this was a very traumatic experience with AJ Dillon because we thought we had it in the bag. We thought we had a starter season coming from him for like 72 hours when they didn't tag him, and then they signed
top
him.
50 startup pick at the time.
Yeah, and then we thought that they weren't going to sign Aaron Jones. They didn't tag him at the deadline, at the time to do it. And like, we're like, hey, he's going to hit free agency. He's going to the Jets was the thought, like all these things. And then they signed him like right when free agency opened. It was like, or right before free agency opened. And it was like, it got away from us. So no, this is a good opportunity. I actually was worried that Aaron Jones was more hurt than he was, just because everyone said that, hey, listen, like it doesn't look like a sprained knee. It didn't look like a sprained MCL. And it gave me a lot of pause when that happens. Like, if everyone doesn't think it's that, what's actually going on? But lo and behold, it wasn't that major. So it's actually great news. I'm happy for Aaron Jones, but this is good to see AJ Dillon get a potential run here.
Yeah, and we like to have these points in the season because they offer a very instructive and real life example of what we discuss of being in the robust running back business. Because when you get these opportunities, and frankly, now we're in the crunch time, we are in the final month or so of the fantasy season, which means every win is critical. And if you get an infusion straight to the veins of a potential, and this is not hyperbole, he has the potential this week to be the running back 1 overall. And there's plenty of running backs, if they fill in, they have very little chance of doing that. This is one of those, Madison, Tony Pollard, there's a small subset that could actually get all the way home of being like a 2 or 3 touchdown performance, a guy that posts 150, 200 yards. These are possible outcomes. Now, it may not happen. Again, the perfect storm opportunity is there. But this is such that, again, and we also, I think we deemed it the Alexander Mattison effect, where
yes,
the backup is going to probably have a higher market share than the starter because, checks who the backup is. They pretty much don't really have one. Patrick Taylor, maybe they masquerade Amari Rodgers back there for 5 snaps. But the point is, AJ Dillon is going to get a higher market share of that backfield than Aaron Jones did because there's no Dillon behind Dillon. There's not a Dillon on Dillon. I did have a couple fast facts that I wanted the things that I learned about AJ Dillon, and I knew a lot. I knew a lot about him coming out of Boston College. Name is Algiers Jamil William Dillon Jr. So he's got a long one. His nicknames, we know about, calling one of his legs Quadzilla. Did you know the other one is called the Quadfather?
I heard that today.
Okay. Then he's also nicknamed the Sauce. So I think we should actually just nickname him the Sauce because he loves applesauce.
I believe that is his face. I believe that is his Twitter handle. Something to do with his sauce. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a fellow applesauce fan. I can relate. It's amazing to think that we turned out body frame wise so differently for both loving applesauce, but it's possible. I have like a AJ Green BMI light, and he is literally a tree trunk with with
lungs, right?
Exactly, with lungs. That's a good one. And then finally, this is actually the best historical poll. I'm not a big historian, but his grandfather was the first African American captain in Notre Dame history.
Interesting.
And he set school records for receptions in a season and a career at the time. Okay. So good on senior AJ Dillon.
So that means that maybe there is some receiving ability in his bloodline, which
who knew?
Unbelievable.
Who knew? If only at some point he could make a catch. This is a guy who doesn't get any receiving work.
Right. I wish we could have seen that at any point. This is a classic. He's a classic example too. By the way, one other fact I found in the research for the show, Chuck Norris sleeps with an AJ Dillon nightlight. So there is a, he's a good example of the fact that just because someone has not done something doesn't mean they can't do it. Right. And that's something that we should remember in evaluations. It's tough to a lot of what we do is trying to gauge uncertain situations. We're just not sure a lot of the times. We just don't know, right? We're not
we get
privy
hit
to
over the head with it. We're not sure.
Right. So we should have a wide range of outcomes on players, especially where there's a lack of information. Jonathan Taylor and AJ Dillon in small sample sizes, in short sample sizes in college, showed decent receiving metrics. Again, it could be a situation where their team knows. There's multiple different explanations for that. Their team knows they can't really catch, so we're going to build this offense around them not catching because they can't really catch. Or it's, hey, we're not going to do that, right? Doesn't matter if they can catch or not. That's just not what we're going to do. Either one of those things would potentially explain why they were so lack of receiving centric in their college offenses. We have to sort of be open to both ideas, right? And the fact that, hey, these coaches just aren't using them that way. And, but the thing that's always confounded me about AJ Dillon is when people say, listen, he can't catch or whatever, that's like, he's a freak athlete. And this is the same thing with Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor for that purpose. This is a freak athlete in almost every respects. We don't think he's got the hand-eye coordination to put his hands together and catch a ball like out in the flat. Like, it's not, we undersell people's like intelligence sometimes, or just basic capability to do. And I'm not talking like he needs to be Jerry Rice, but the people talked like he had, dolphin flippers for hands. Like it got a little out of control.
Yeah, and honestly, I did it before 2020 with his class, but he is an example, a recent one, of why I think it's so important with a lot of the projection model stuff I do for prospects, is that not just looking at the receiving yards, or number of catches, that specifically running back only market share, because who is the primary pass catcher for their team? Because every team throws somewhat. I mean, no one avoids it completely, other than the 49ers this past week and a few other weeks. But that's a separate conversation. But for AJ Dillon, he had a year where he was well above the baseline. He had 65% market share, which is very good, even for a 21-year-old at his point in his career. Mm-hmm. So just Boston College didn't throw to running backs a lot, but there was at least one year when AJ Dillon was clearly the go-to guy. It might have been for single digits if I'd have to go back and look. But the point is, no one else was stealing receptions from him. And he actually made a couple plays. I mean, you could put on the quote unquote highlight reel. It would be short for his receiving work. But as you mentioned, I mean, someone that has a lot of physical acumen in many ways, to say that he can't physically catch something, at this point, because he was a workhorse in college. And again, so he had a 40% receiving score for me coming out, which is not, there's plenty of guys that are like single digits and stuff, and plenty of guys that aren't 220, 230
Is it
plus.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire fit in that category? Or?
Almost. you're getting warmer. So for AJ Dillon, I think you brought up a prudent point, which is especially the thing that impressed me. We knew he'd mash, and we knew he'd move piles, and one-on-one, I mean, it's just like good luck. Good luck, because when he gets to the second level, he outweighs everybody. Like, that's the thing. Like, unless a D lineman is tackling him, he has a tactical advantage over everybody. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine like if a DB, and especially a corner, is on an island and he's coming? I mean, what's gonna happen? Like, what do you do? What do you do? He can actually elude you. That I will say. One thing I thought of is Derrick Henry. The one advantage Derrick Henry has, in my opinion, over AJ Dillon is long speed. He's faster, long speed. Not to say Dillon is slow. He certainly is not. But I think there's more lateral explosion. There's way more ability with Dillon to stop and re-navigate during a play. And with Henry, when it stops, it stops. And I think that's one big negative of why they don't use Henry more in the passing game, is because if he has to stop to catch the ball or a screen pass, it takes him a while to get back up to speed. Even Joe Mixon goes, man, his burst needs a little work. and with Dillon, I feel like he's much better in that capacity. Like, you have to remind yourself every 5 seconds, he's 250. He's 250. He moves like he's 228. I mean, it really is not fair. I mean, a freak is really a quality and accurate term there. So This week, and again, it's a 1-game sample size. We'll see. Could turn out to be more. I was actually surprised to hear the 1 game, maybe Jones comes back the following week. They have a bye looming. Like, why would you not take the 2 games? It turns into 3 and just not risk it. But I don't make NFL decisions, so I may not understand those if Dillon can haul the mail. So I don't. Any final thoughts on Dillon and just this week or what the profile represents?
Do you know who Matt LaFleur's running back was before he became the head coach of the Green Bay Packers?
I do not.
Derrick Henry. So he was the offensive coordinator in Tennessee for the year before he came over. By the way, fun fact, the last 4 games that Matt LaFleur coached Derrick Henry, 238 rushing yards, 170 rushing yards, 84 and 93. So
I do question. I mean, I don't think Dillon is going to be able to hold up to a meaningful workload, though. I mean, that is something that is a questionable aspect of his profile so far. Seeing that, how many touches, just offhand, how many touches do you think he got in the 4th quarter of last week's game? I know he had 4 or 5 highlight plays, so he obviously had at least that many. He had BC games, I swear, that was 35 plus carries.
Yeah, for those people that are listening to this and not watching it on YouTube with Chad's incredibly bad poker face, he's being sarcastic about the workload on AJ Dillon.
Yeah, he was an absolute monster, unquestionably so in college, and here he is with an opportunity to be a workhorse in the NFL. Yeah. So surprise, surprise, I think he's going to be up for the task.
Yes.
Thank goodness.
AJ Dillon in the snow. We need Green Bay to be a 1 seed. AJ Dillon in the snow.
Yeah, more sarcasm coming. Thank goodness Kylan Hill is hurt. Thank goodness the runway is clear. Watch out, Patrick Taylor a coming. That's all I'll say. Yeah. Hey, let's play one more thing. Let's play guess the rushing market share for AJ Dillon. Is it 85, 90?
Are we talking running back specific? Or are we talking
running
like
back
Randall
specific?
Cobb? Like a Randall Cobb
Randall
around counting against him?
No. And they have to be in the backfield. So if they line up Amari Rodgers in the backfield, it counts, but not an end around.
I mean, 90%? It's going to be
92%.
Right. It's going to be. I mean, we've actually seen some games where backup running backs have gone essentially 100%, and
yeah, close to it. Yeah.
And this is maybe some of the new NFL stuff. And I've been thinking about this a lot too. Like when you see these and why this Alexander Madison theory actually works is because we're seeing more specialization in the NFL. So we don't really have, it's rare for teams to have three guys.
The 3 guy is a special teamer, right? And he might be a guy that's 185 pounds.
Totally. And, and with the specialization, everything like that, you're not going to carry, a Brian Hill type. It's not, they don't hang out on the running back 3 where it's, he's good enough. He can do everything sort of as a backup running back as a 3. That's not typically what you see.
They might be on the practice squad. I mean, right. So who knows?
Maybe.
But yeah, I mean, actually aren't the Falcons pretty rare in that case than that they have Mike Davis, but yeah, Gallman's their 3.
Totally.
I mean, that's rare, relatively rare, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
A guy you could look around. Be a 2-down player. Two-way player.
The Patriots might have one. You could say, Tampa. Like you just look around a little bit, but as you sort of get to that 3rd level on a lot of these teams, it's not. Especially when you have a good number 2. It's very. It is definitely a thing, and we're seeing that a lot of consolidation with these running backs. Darrell Williams, especially. By the way, I don't know where you were. I was riding my bike when Darrell Williams high pointed the ball in the end zone, like contested catch, high point, moss somebody. And I almost.
To the radio. Were you listening to the radio?
No, I was watching it on the TV and I almost fell over. I was like, I lost function of my body. I was like, what is happening right now? This is amazing.
He just showed better ball skills than McCole Hardman ever has. That was my first thought. I would be like, here I was questioning what the Chiefs were going to do at wide receiver 2+ this whole time when the answer was more Darrell Williams. Yes. How about that? I mean, they might have won the Super Bowl because the chuck it up game last year, it wasn't working because of who he was throwing to.
Right. Yeah.
That was the missing piece.
Yeah. 100% snap share. He's Kansas City's version of Cordero Patterson.
Yeah. And what we just did there is basically say Jerick McKinnon is insignificant. Yes, we underhandedly did that. That just happened. All right. This is Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 78 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And want to mention props fantasy. It's the new way to play fantasy sports. And it's the teams you already have. So this is, you want more action. So you got a league, you got a bunch of rosters. And now you can challenge in a one-on-one way on a weekly basis to win prizes. Go up and pummel your league mates, your friends, everybody, potentially the props community as well. All you have to do is sync your leagues, Sleeper, Yahoo, more are coming soon like ESPN, and get ready to cash out. And there's still a chance for you to win with your teams that you've already drafted in your league. So go over to propsfantasy.com/guys to sync your rosters and start winning your first challenge today. Let's get to some dynasty trades, and we got some interesting ones. Let's kick off with the classic, give a bunch of picks for a player. So this obviously is the calculus of, is the player worth it? And, what needs to happen for this to be a winning trade? So you're giving up an FFPC 1 quarterback. You're giving up CeeDee Lamb for 322 firsts. And how they are designated by projection here is one's going to be a top 4 lock, and at least one is going to be a playoff team. So one's going to be back half, one's going to be early, one's going to be who knows.
Is this CeeDee Lamb for Keenan Allen in 2 firsts, or CeeDee Lamb for Mike Evans in 2 firsts,
I
or
like
Amari
where
Cooper
you're going here,
firsts,
Jordan.
or...
I like what you're doing.
I'm just thinking
it's going to be a lot of things like that. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean,
could this be for CeeDee Lamb for Keenan Allen, Zeke in a second? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just the pieces on this, like, I don't know. I don't think anyone. It's
why
pretty
use
rare.
Your first for this,
right?
Is that what you're questioning?
Well, I mean, 3 firsts is too much to pay for almost any player. Outside of like a very, very select few. And I mean, we're getting back to the CeeDee Lamb's playing behind Michael Gallup phase of CeeDee Lamb's career, with Michael Gallup back for the first week. Like, they split snaps again. Like, here we go again. Like, they're kicking him back into the slot and playing him not outside at all. Like,
Gallup is good.
Got it.
You're bearing the lead. Gallup is a good wide receiver. So
like history shouldn't have told us this was going to happen again. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen this. We've seen this play out. We saw it all last year. This is the same question that we had. Now instantly Gallup's back, and hey, they're kicking CeeDee Lamb back inside for 80% of his snaps.
I love paying 3 firsts for a guy. I can't wait for Gallup to leave in free agency.
right.
Boy, this is going to pay off in spades when that happens.
Yeah.
Dependency. I love playing multiple firsts for a dependent player.
Yeah. No, I would just much rather. I mean, you could do. You could take the picks in fractional sell-offs and get a lot more. You could do a lot better. You could get an upgrade at running back, wide receiver, and tight end, and with those picks. So I would definitely.
If you don't have one of those, the halves of the tight end position, that would probably be a better way to spend 1 or 2 of these first. Would you agree with that? Like, if you don't have Kelsey or Pitts or Kittle or Waller, or like whoever's in that small subset for you, like, get one of those guys, and maybe it costs a first and a second, maybe it costs 2 firsts, and you get a tight end plus somebody else. But I think that provides more bang for your buck than just going after a wide receiver.
Yes,
certainly cheaper ones. Wide receiver, like, you should not really be paying 2 firsts for any of them, because like, just shop around and you can get someone you really like for a first.
You should always be on the other side of this deal. You should always be arbing them, right? You should always be like, you should always be taking the plus side of whatever receiver thing, because you can do it so many different ways.
Yep. All right. We've got a fringe playoff team with the dreaded injuries at running back. I would say, so the injuries didn't benefit you because you didn't have the backups. Moving on. We've got, what they did is they paid a 22 second and a 23 first for James Robinson.
Do we think is that super flex, or is that not that it matters?
I think it's one quarterback.
One quarterback. I mean, you got to take the pick side. And this is you should never find.
You're a proponent of Robinson, for the record here. I mean, you have talked positively of James Robinson, the player, and James Robinson, the potential buy.
Yes, but you don't do it like this. You still have the issue of Travis Etienne coming back. Like, that is full right in our face. And listen, if this is a Chris Carson Penny thing, we don't know that yet, which is the problem. Like, if this turns out in a year that that's where we are, well, then we missed it. But it's not something that we're going to know in advance. And this is one where, if a team doesn't have a good commitment factor to a player, and you don't want to pay premium future assets for that player. If this was a 2022 first, I think it's a different conversation, because if it's a 2022 first and James Robinson is going to help you make it late and start one in a class that we don't necessarily love, I can sort of get on board with that. The problem is this pick, for James Robinson to help the pick, he's going to have to be like a near all-time outlier in terms of where he came from pedigree wise. And it's just really tough to do that. And so that's not a bet that I want to make. And especially that far out, especially when the fact that they drafted Etienne. And like, I can't, even if James Robinson's better than Etienne, their commitment factor to Etienne is going to make Robinson a tough asset at points over the next year. And, as a result of that, like, I'd much rather have the picks. Again, you could do this, like I probably wouldn't do this, but I'd feel better doing it about it for Fournette than I would James Robinson, which might seem crazy to say, just because I think he has less encumbered outs than Robinson does. There's almost no way that James Robinson gets a clean out of this because Etienne's coming back. You could see a situation like Fournette, and I don't think you need to pay this much. I wouldn't pay this much, but there's other backs that are maybe lesser perceived that this would be a better bet than Robinson.
Yeah, a lot of what you said, and one of my first thoughts was the conversation we had about a team we have together, about the idea of trading your own first, but also you control more variables the closer the pick is to now. Like, so trading in 2023 or 2024, you open up a whole gambit of that team looks completely different by then, especially if they've already been trading away current picks and you're like, well, I don't think they've done it properly. And now you get on the secondary end, you get like their 23 first, when you're like, you look and they don't have their 22 first or second. And you're like, they're fixated on 3 or 4 players and 1 or 2 of them are on the older side, or I don't really trust that profile. And that's how you get top picks. That exact scenario is how you get them. And when you are supplementing a playoff team, which is what you said, that, you control that 22 second, but you don't control the 23 first.
Right.
Because if Robinson turns into a glimpse, a tumbleweed, and by most of next season, you're not starting Robinson at all, then you paid for the risk. So you either keep trying to make that, if that's your own pick, you keep trying to make it later by making a bunch of other maybe bad decisions, by trading your other picks away or trading away other younger players, so that just that one pick doesn't hemorrhage and turn horrifically early. So I think this can create a cascade of bad decisions and ultimately a downtrodden franchise. And it feels weird to kind of think of it. Oh, come on, you gave up a first for this player, and you're making a run, but you have to be really careful. And we're both open to trading picks. I'm more open to it than ever before, but I wouldn't do it in this fashion. And I would also say, trust me, I've been there years ago. My worst trades, point blank, were trading mid to later season, and I needed running back. Those are absolutely, categorically. I'm every way from Sunday. I traded and they would either get hurt or just underproduce, and I didn't finish how I wanted to, and and then they turn into a bag of beans the next year, because running back can go any variety of directions if you're not going with truly insulated profiles.
And it never feels good. And I would be like, just to pull on that thread you just left there for a second, is it, and this is probably a conversation for another day and more full, is it the market that has changed your opinion on future picks, or is it the way that you analyze and understand players that has changed?
Both.
Okay.
I think that it is wildly different, and there was a cross section, and I don't really feel like if it's a cross section, it's like very small subset that actually are looking to give away, and I use giveaway strictly in the term, give away future picks and even give away future firsts. That low-hanging fruit is generally not there in most dynasty leagues. And I'm in a wide variety of platforms, of formats, with a lot of different kind of folks. And it just doesn't really happen anymore. So that's part of it, is that the juiced factor of what people will buy, what people will pay for those firsts has changed completely. So if I'm competing with the rest of the league and they're willing to pay X amount, I mean, I'm not going to be in that bidding war. And if they want them, they can have them, but it generally is pricey. And then now I'm seeing, especially last year or two, some of the, especially wide receivers, that's generally what I go in there looking to do, is turn, a dicey wide receiver 3 into a no question top 20, top 24 guy, that I love the profile, and it solidifies everything. It creates roster spots. It does so much. So when you're talking about, I like my team, especially when you get to this point in the season, I mean, unless you're 5-5, or maybe if you're 6-4 and you're like, I need some help. But if you're better than that, I mean, you're 7-3 plus, like you're basically saying I'm in, and it's just a matter if I get a bye. Like if you're in that bucket or better, like the floor, I mean, the outcome of that pick of trading your 22, and again, we're not talking 23, it's so high. Like, what's that going to turn into? 107, 108? I mean, especially in one quarterback, I think it makes even more sense. Like you start going down this rabbit hole of circumstances, like one quarterback, I'm contending, I have a pretty good record right now, and man, wouldn't it be nice if my wide receiver core was a little tighter and a little better. Like, yeah. Oh, well, I mean, like if you actually make this a to-do list item in the next week and a half or 2.5 weeks, whatever it is, man, how do you keep your pick? I guess I would ask that question. How do you keep your pick? If you just go around the bottom 3, 4, 5 teams and say, who's your wide receiver 1, basically, and like, let me see if I can buy that guy for a first, like, and you may be able to ask for more than that. I mean, who knows? So how do you keep it? I guess would be the way I've come all the way to knowing everything about the market.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I just the upside of the bet, especially I think where people sell the pick wrong is where they don't sell it for a high enough asset, right? Like I kind of have a rule of like, it needs to be a top, for the purposes of this podcast, top 30 asset, right? We could define, we could change that type of asset.
Well, plenty of people don't. I will say plenty of people don't consider Mike Evans in that bucket of what you just said.
So. Right. Totally agree. But I think people will do it for too low of an asset. It's sort of a
fringe guy that doesn't matter.
Right. It's got to be someone,
and that's the wrong way. Exactly.
It's got to be someone that matters.
Aim high.
Absolutely. And so I use top 30 as a moniker.
Yeah, because use the premise again that there are people, especially at the bottom of the standings right now, that believe the only way to get better and contend next year, this is going to sound laughable, I know, but the only way to contend next year is to acquire future rookie picks. They believe that's the way to turn around their team that did not make the playoffs this year, is with picks.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's their view, it's not insulting to look at their best players and say, I will give you a first round pick for that player.
Right.
That is not an insulting offer.
Right.
Because especially if it's a player over 25, 26 years old at any position. So just keep that in mind. All right, we do have one more trade. This is like the longest trading section ever for 3 deals. All right, so we have a 14-team non-PPR. We have Diontae Johnson and a later 22 first. So back half, we're talking playoffs for Devonta Smith, and a later 22 second. So moving down a full round in 14-team and moving from Diontae Johnson. This is hard. Devonta Smith.
Yeah. I tried to pronounce the name of the wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints today, whose last name is Harris. And in a million different ways, and I mispronounced it. And I called him multiple different people.
You want a better one? Try to do the current injury away running back in Detroit. Try to do his name.
Godwin Igwebuike.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
you are. Yeah. I don't think that's right though.
It's close.
It's close enough. It's probably closer than Diontae Harris. Hey, Another man, one man's easy name is another man's hard name.
Yeah. Well, he's
Michael
he's
Thomas
a
is
convert.
very difficult for me. No, but his nickname's Iggy. Thank goodness. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
This might be the 1 week we are ever talking about Iggy.
That's perfect. I had them for the training camp reports this year, and he is a positional convert of interest, and they really liked him. And it was interesting. He has some athletic profile to him that's pretty interesting, and they were trying to figure out, like, they were worried that he was going to get picked up on waivers, so they had
football player.
Yeah, it was interesting because he's a late positional convert to a running back, so he might be better than Jamar Jefferson already. So we'll have to see. That's Dan Campbell wants to just absolutely grind DeAndre Swift to the stump on his rookie.
You know who I think is a bell cow? One of the better receiving backs in the NFL.
Right. The guy that's the worst against expectation at rushing in the league.
The whole time watching that game, I was like, please stop. Just please stop. It's that one thing. It's like, he's already dead. Like, it was so bad. I was like, you're doing all of this to try to tie. You're doing all of this to miss a field goal as poorly as you can do. Yeah. What are we doing? Like, all this to not go. What is it? No, they're still winless.
Yeah. To not go.
What's it called?
Yeah. Completely defeated. I don't know. Yeah, we usually
you're like, what did they actually prevent? What did they just now prevent? They're still winless.
Yeah.
They're still horribly off track here.
You could put lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig.
This is classic. By the way. We really we have unbuttoned our shirt a Miami, Florida level. Like, you can see so many chains right now. We are so loose with this show. We are truly. Who knew it was episode 78? Where that's really where you get comfortable. It's not 50. It's not 62. It's not early 70s. It's mostly later 70s.
Yeah.
So this turned out to be, again, Diontae. Now I know where it started. We couldn't pronounce names.
Right.
Diontae Johnson and a first for Devonta Smith and a second.
I mean, this is Diontae Johnson and a first, right? This is the exact discussion we just had on the CeeDee Lamb thing.
Smith is hot, so I'm just clarifying the market that Smith is hot.
Yeah,
he's going to be great.
He may well be, but Diontae Johnson's pretty good too. And I mean, we've gotten to a point where I think I've never expected I'd be at this place. This is like me being on David Montgomery, like a whole bunch of other guys that I've just not really moved.
I guess I'm in this now. I guess this is the moment. Yeah.
He's basically done kind of what I expected him to do. And all of a sudden now I'm in. And
Raiders Latavius Murray all the way out.
Right.
Other versions of Latavius Murray all the way in.
Make him the logo. So yeah, he I'm in on Diontae Johnson, especially at his cost. And I think you take a first. This is a classic wide receiver. You do this trade a million times, you're going to be a highly profitable dynasty player. You do this trade every time. When you get two guys that are in the same range and you can get a first on it at the wide receiver position, do it all the time. And this
I got him in the same tier in the wide receiver rankings, and yeah, I'm not even. Who knew I was a Diontae Johnson fan? But you start throwing firsts around, I'm in on this.
Yes.
And at first, just to play this out, we already talked about how a first gives you lots of options. So a later second and 14 team, not a lot of options.
Gives you no options.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of outs. And I would even play this all the way out to the draft. What are the odds, do you think, of getting a pretty declared and confident injury away running back in the later second of a 14-teamer? Non-PPR, where running backs probably go a little earlier.
It's really tough in that range.
Well, it's
really
low.
Tough.
Now, what do you think about a later first?
That
pretty good. You have pretty good odds.
Right.
So, and again, you can trade that for, I mean, again, what if that first
Keenan
represents Allen. Exactly. So would you not get Keenan Allen and Johnson for Smith? I mean, that's unbelievable.
Right.
So it's the proxy of what that pick means. And that's why you got to be very careful about these. And that's why, I mean, some of these little, like, I'll give you a player, an early or mid-second and a later second for a first. And you do that now because that first gives you a lot more flexibility than that other stuff.
Right.
Like working your way up the board, it's like all of a sudden it's a first. Well, you might trade that before the deadline still, one that you just acquired. But when you get to the draft, it might have been 203 to 107, and that could be a big, big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Deductive reasoning, that's 7 or 8 players that are on the board that wouldn't be otherwise.
Yeah, just one other thing too. Just so I just want to make what we're saying clear, because this might be, if you listen to Jordan and Chad circa 2017, it might be disorienting a little bit in terms of what we're talking about. We're saying it at one point, like the picks can be useful when you don't use them, and then in the next breath we're saying, hey, you can trade for them here and it's valuable. Both things can be true. I tend to find my big. Right. They are an asset and a tool. So I tend to find myself to be the most profitable with my rookie picks by moving around the board in rookie drafts with them, whether that's moving back, typically adding future assets, adding current players, all that stuff. But you can do that now too. And so I do think we're talking more about using them as assets than we necessarily are, hey, I'm going to stick and pick at 109 with this future first, right? I think that there's a difference there that I think just warrants parsing out a little bit.
I just thought of the greatest answer to a question when you invariably get it in February and they go, who should I pick at 109? And you go, Keenan.
Amari Cooper. Yeah.
Amari. Yeah. Your answer is Amari Cooper. Right. And they're like, I don't understand. You broke my brain. Exactly. That is the ultimate. Do want to remind you that signing up for the daily email update for Football Guys is where you need to be. Every night, Joe Bryant is going to deliver the news right to your inbox. You're not going to be left behind. You're going to be right in line with your league mates. Over 500,000 people are on this email list. And that means you're getting the news, you're getting the analysis, you're getting breaking news emails as applicable, and you're going to sign up for the free email update as it's designated at the right top of the homepage at footballguys.com. All right, let's get to some of the quotes from the Dynasty Forum this week. It's a little light, but I did find some. How about this? Anything for Austin Hooper is a huge get.
I texted you the other day and I said, don't laugh. I said, Austin Hooper's on the block in our 2 tight end league.
Narrator Chad laughed. Do you remember the text that you sent me about something? Or I sent you something and all I did was send you an audio one, and it was just me laughing like it was a Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah, I forget what it was. It had something to do with it.
Someone was giving us,
yeah.
We were going to give a first and a second for some player that we had no interest or something.
Yeah. I learned something new that day, by the way, is that you can actually save a voice memo. And I saved that for future reference because I thought it was that hilarious. Yeah. If I ever needed a pick me up.
It literally was just me going, ah!
Jalen Hurts for a first. Oh, Jalen Hurts. No, that's not what it was. I'm sorry.
That sounds right, misrepresented. For like 5 firsts.
It was Jalen Hurts for Deshaun Watson, Antonio Gibson, a first and a second. That's what it was.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And I got the audio here.
And didn't you just say something like, we have a trade offer in our league? Like,
no, you just sent it to me without any provocation. It was in the middle of the daytime on a Friday.
Sent you a screenshot and I sent you an audio message. That was it.
Yeah. And it was just Chad's reaction to this.
Just laugh. Yeah, it was like great. Narrator.
Great.
Chad sees fresh email trade possibilities for our co-owned league. Hello.
I'm in.
Austin Hooper still available and waiting to be asked to Sadie Hawkins.
Yeah. I don't know. It depends the format. It's really tough in a start one. It's really tough in a non-premium to probably find value in them. If you're
Woodhall in a 2 tight end.
I mean,
by deductive reasoning, he would get a second. I mean, is that?
I mean, if you
plays
could give
tight end, and he's a serviceable.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you could give a third, if you could give a third centric package, that would be interesting. And again, he's a starting tight end. That has value.
Is he?
When you look at his routes, like he's run a sufficient number of routes to I think call like him in, especially in a post Odell world, like. Right. But it's not super valuable. So I have a question. What do you think about Baker Mayfield being a question from the Shark Bowl? It's from Jordan. What do we think about Baker Mayfield's longevity as a starter in the NFL?
Yeah, I think he's going to be around as long as Andy Dalton has been around.
But Andy Dalton,
no. But I mean that he's going to get overpaid by the Browns. He's going to be the classic Joe Flacco, gets paid because the team is going to be, and maybe rightfully, scared of what the lost in the woods is if you just say no to somebody. So I would not do that. Now, again, I would need to be. I don't like the fact that front offices and coaching staffs and stuff like that. Like, you can say, "Oh yeah, you'll be fine," but when you tell them your plan, and it's like, I think signing Baker Mayfield to a big contract would be a grave mistake. Like, if you say that phrase, and they're like, "Oh, I see, I see." So, what's your plan? Wilderness. Oh,
Case
okay.
Keenum.
You're talking about like a potential implosion. Yes, that may be possible. That may happen. So you're talking about like fringe playoff to wilderness is what, like camping. Yeah. We'll figure it out. Like, we're talking day 3 picks, and like we're gonna maybe sign Taysom Hill for $11 million. Like, who knows? Oh, so okay. Well, if you do this, just know it has to work out instantly, or you're just gonna be gone. Like, like, so that's why no one ever really picks that. It's like, well, at least Baker Mayfield sucks. At least at least we said we had a plan, and we can maybe cobble it. We'll get another chance. Like Trey Lance, if Kyle Shanahan like is the coach for next year and beyond or whatever, like if Trey Lance doesn't work out, that's it. That's it. No mas. You don't get any more chances. You mortgaged everything. This guy has to be the guy. I mean, he's got to be better than Garoppolo.
He's screwed up one franchise quarterback. Might as well let him do a second one, right?
All right, fair enough.
I mean,
Kyle, you're back in.
Remember when everyone ragged on Belichick for getting ripped off for Garoppolo? Now Garoppolo's like throwing 8 times a game in a Monday Night Football game because Shanahan doesn't trust him.
He was 8 for 8 at the time.
Right.
It is important to know.
I'm not sure who the screw up is in this situation, but yeah, it's something.
Yeah. Remember when the NFL let Bill Belichick walk into Mac Jones without trading up?
Right.
Remember when that happened?
Yes.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Yes. By the way, AJ Dillon's, I don't know if you know what the second week matchup of how closely you followed the Green Bay Packers schedule is, but I have. And his not this week, but the next week is the Rams. And they just got waxed by the 49ers on the ground. So I'm in for 45 carries for AJ Dillon.
You know that what movie was it when you had Brian Bosworth playing the linebacker, and he met someone. I think it was a movie that like centered around steroids, or he was taking steroids or whatever. Some college player, but he met some running back at the goal line and got just ran over. And it was like a big significant part of the movie. What do you think if you get AJ Dillon coming from 7 yards deep, goal line play, and he meets Aaron Donald in the hole? What happens?
Just it's like one of those cartoon.
Do face masks come off like Necessary Roughness? They just fly away.
It's like a cartoon car crash.
Maybe it's like the magician that goes, "I will make someone disappear," and it just turns into a puff of smoke. Maybe it's all a puff of smoke, and then we're like, "What happens now?" Everyone just looks around. There is no ball. It's like Neo. There is no ball.
Define the space-time continuum.
Yeah. There is no goal line. Actually, what happens if they meet and they both go sideways? They both with the momentum slightly to the horizontal plane. They both go straight sideways all the way to the pylon, and then AJ Dillon reaches it, and then they have to go to review. That's how the play ends. Anyway, this is about Austin Hooper, by the way. We just can't get away from Algier. All right. Juju Smith-Schuster is still young, but is trending towards just being a Jag in fantasy, and Jag is just a guy.
So this is interesting because I wonder what and I have the same concern with a guy like Will Fuller, who I like, but I wonder at this point in their career, injuries wise,
ambiguous,
production wise, are they essentially 1-year rental guys? Is Juju look a little bit more like Sammy Watkins in terms of like, taking 1-year steps than he does, Corey Davis signing a multi-year big time guaranteed money type contract, right? That's the concern that I have with these levels of ambiguity at this point in their contract.
If a team does not view him as a number one, are they going to pay him as such? Like there may not be a market for a possession centric number 2, or with Will Fuller, a guy where we say we don't know how many games we're going to have him.
Right. And he's basically is he going to basically become Ted Ginn? Right.
But at 24, 25 years old, did Juju have the Chiefs as a 1-year deal, the Steelers as a 1-year deal, and maybe one other team? And that's not really a great look for being on the young side of a second contract potential. He would be the type where if the NFL bought in, you would think, oh yeah, 4 for 45, 4 for 50, nice money, and a 2 to 3 year in brass tacks commitment on that that paper deal of 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah, I find Juju Smith-Schuster is probably one of the top 5 wide receivers that I struggle to value and rank, because the historical career arc part of me is like, yes. The last 18-month evaluative part is like, no, we don't do that. No. All right, we got one more.
Consuela.
Consuela. As Superflex goes, it has definitely been my experience that second rounders are worth more than in other formats.
Well, that's true, because your picks are more relevant. There's more people to pick from. There's more assets, right? There's just more people that are valuable, so it goes deeper. So I do think those picks matter. But it's a steep curve, though, right? So yes, they matter more, but firsts are still triple as valuable.
Well, because they're even more valuable because you get the quarterbacks mixed in. If you go non-quarterback, you just have a lot more. You have one more position that truly matters. The other thing I would say is when you get seconds and you hit the lotto and they turn 201, 203 early in the round, there's plenty of times those are a first in practice. 110 through 202 might be all one tier.
Yep.
And depending on how the draft rolls, you may get the guy that you would take first of that group, even though you're fading to third or fourth in that lineage at 201, 202. So that's what I do like, the flexibility of yes, it could be 212 and you're kind of out there, or it could turn pretty early and it could almost be a proxy first. So there's a lot of benefit there, but just the extra position having relevance, and especially if you mix in 2 tight end, I mean, now you're cooking with lots of options, throughout the first 2 rounds. And sometimes the same thing, IDP. I mean, for folks that don't play IDP, I mean, sometimes, the stud IDP and linebackers and stuff like that, I mean, they are readily available in round 2. And so that's, I mean, just an added whole entire half of the football field, that is added to the mix. And what I love about that is third round in IDP is what I found is becomes really valuable, because you're getting second round offensive players that fall in there. And if they don't, then it ends up being IDPs where you're like, they might be startable in year 1. So a lot of benefits there. All right. We discussed a lot. And what I love is we bounced around, like we're playing Foursquare, where we mentioned AJ Dillon a few different times. Again, we went over how.
Still got 20 minutes. We want to keep going. We
still got 20 minutes on Algiers. Let's get this going. Chip. Let's go more into his family history there. But we talked a lot about trading picks, and we had 3 dynasty trade examples this week that talked about the value of acquiring, of trading away, the risks involved in said ventures. Also, at the end of the show, again, we talked about things like Juju Smith-Schuster, some of those tough to value profiles, and even Austin Hooper. And 2 tight end is a really fun format. And just for folks that haven't played it, that is definitely one to reshape how you view and value that position. All right. I am Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. Until next time, good luck in your dynasty leagues. Oh, cover the spread.